Okay, we're recording again. So, a huge welcome to all you lovely people. It's very good to see you. It feels like quite a long time since our last speaker. I think many of you were here for Raymond Friel's excellent talk last time, and we have actually moved things around a bit. I'm sorry, it's a bit difficult because obviously I'm not in email contact with all of you. It's a bit difficult to get communication out to everyone, but we've done a swap around. So our speaker this week is actually Martin Johnson, who's going to talk to us about what makes a good Catholic school curriculum, what's an authentic Catholic school curriculum, or a curriculum in a Catholic school, whichever way round you want to show it. So we're going to start with a prayer as per usual. I'll share my screen. If I could remind you all to mute apart from our lovely speaker, please. That would be great. Apologies if you hear clitter clatter in the background. My dogs have both decided to wake up from their sleep and clatter around. Okay, so what does an authentic Catholic curriculum look like is our theme for this week. And some polite reminders, the session is being recorded and it will go onto the Educarum website, and also I believe Redemptorists are putting it on their website, and I think possibly they're putting it on YouTube as well. So a reminder, please keep your mic on mute. If you're struggling for a signal or moving around, you know, if you get up to go for a drink or something, it would be great if you could turn your camera off, otherwise we will watch you instead of our speaker. Use the chat function later on to ask a question, or you can do it during the chat if you want, the talk if you want to, but that's where I will take our questions from. And then you can't see it because it's hidden behind us, but if can I move that over a bit, you can see our next session is on the 11th of June and it's 3:30 to 4:30. I will introduce Martin in a little while, but we're going to start, as always, with a prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. A prayer remembering God is with us. Lord Jesus Christ, you said to your disciples, I am with you always. Please be with me today. Hear my prayers for others and for myself, and keep me in your care. Christ be with me, Christ within me, Christ behind me, Christ before me, Christ beside me, Christ to win me, Christ to comfort and restore me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ in quiet, Christ in danger, Christ in hearts of all that love me, Christ in mouth of friend and stranger. And that, of course, is an extract from St. Patrick's breastplate. And those of you who are using their resources, I've actually borrowed that from 1010. So we're going to start with the reflection from our chapter today. So we're actually looking at chapter 5. We've come a little bit out of sync. And this is a reflection, a letter written by from a Holocaust survivor to educators. Dear teacher, I am a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no man should witness. Gas chambers built by learned engineers. Children poisoned by educated physicians. Infants killed by trained nurses. Women and babies shot and burned by high school and college graduates. So I am suspicious of education. My request is, help your students become more human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more humane. So I'm a little bit off put because it says my mum has entered the waiting room for this reading. Mum has now entered. So I will stop sharing that and introduce to you Martin Johnson. It's my great pleasure to welcome Martin here this week. We have been friends and colleagues since we did the Educarum National School of Formation training together, And Martin, I'm going to let you tell them a little bit about yourself, because you just have so many badges and names and roles now. But I'm worried I'll miss someone out. So if you wouldn't mind, as you start your talk, if you could just, you probably are anyway, going to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, I'd be really grateful. So welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everybody for coming today. So the theme that I'm talking about has the word authentic in it. And so I was just going to start by saying, kind of, how am I an authentic person to be talking about curriculum to you? It's 30 years this year since I went off as a 19-year-old to Edghill University, that was Edghill College of Higher Education then, to do 4 years initial teacher training. And that started to form me, but it didn't finish the formation. In fact, it wasn't the start either. If you're going to be authentic, you need, first of all, to know why you were chosen. Because our belief that we've explored over the last few weeks in this programme is that everybody is chosen by God with a gift. So if I go right back, I was chosen by God to be the son of a farmer. And I grew up on a farm. And that's very much influenced the way that the curriculum has developed at Sacred Heart, West Orton, where I'm the head, where I've worked for 20 years and been the head for the last 15 years. So if I look at who I am and the authenticity of who I am, I think of myself as a farmer's son. I grew up a family, and I became Catholic when he married my mum. So I grew up in a Catholic education, and I went to Sacred Heart Primary School in West Orton, where 2 jobs along as a teacher, I returned in May 2000 as a senior leader here. So I'm a teacher. And when I hear people say the phrase headmaster, I get a little bit worked up inside, because I very much trained to be a teacher. And when I became a head back in January 2006, I quickly realised that you had to invent what that meant for you. And the thing that I was great at was practice in the classroom. And I quickly wanted to go back into class to not get disengaged with that. And I carried on doing that more or less daily for quite a few years, right up until about 2013-14. And the thing that stopped me was I was then invited to, as part of the SSAT group, where I'm on the strategic board, to present across the country on curriculum as part of that review that became our new national curriculum that we're on. I was then invited to go for a term to the Diocese of Salford as the CPDF lead, and that term has now turned into 4 years. So I am the CPDF lead at the Diocese of Salford. I'm the exec head here at Sacred Heart West Orton, which is Heart Teaching School Alliance. And I'm also the CSEL of the St. Teresa of Calcutta Roman Catholic Multi-Academy Trust here in the Diocese of Salford. So the first thing is, why were you appointed to the role that you're appointed in your school? And what do you bring to that role that can influence the curriculum development and authenticity within your school? What's the gift that you bring? The next thing is, what is curriculum? So if you look up the word curriculum, you'll find that it comes from a Latin word that means a race, or the course of a race. At Sacred Heart, we talk about a journey that could be a race. But we can also sometimes find that a curriculum is a dash, a rush. But if we think of that dash in another way, our children that join us this September in reception, in September 2020, will be well into the 2030s when they leave education, maybe up to 2040. So if we bridge those 2 years with a dash, how will we fill that dash with living? And the curriculum has to be about living and how we are forming our students to live their lives now, but also in the future to be lives that are fueled by the Holy Spirit. we've got a national curriculum, and we all know that the job of the national curriculum is to serve the economy. And maybe coming out of lockdown, maybe whenever we come out of pandemic, there'll be a new version of a national curriculum that will lead us to that kind of new reality. I quite doubt that it's going to be the new reality that a lot of these sentimental videos look at that are out there. I think we'll need to do a lot of work in our curriculum at encouraging people not to be selfish and self-centred, because social distancing can lead to that. But the national curriculum is about a little bit more than serving the economy too, because way back in the time of the Education Act, SMSC was critical to that act being passed. And that spiritual, moral, social, cultural aspect must be there when we define our curriculum intent, if we're going to use that Ofsted speak of today. But why are we different? What makes us authentic in our Catholic schools? Well, it tells us in the Bible, in Matthew, what we need to be. It says, we're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavours of the earth. So first of all, how do we taste the flavour of the curriculum that we offer? And how does each of our students react to that flavouring? Does it change their flavour, their essence, who they are? Matthew tells us if we lose our saltiness, how will people taste God in us? You're here to be light, bringing out the God flavours, the God colours of the world. We're seeing a lot of colours, aren't we, at the moment in times of pandemic? People's windows are covered with rainbows. That again goes back to that promise, the promise at the time of Noah's Ark, at the time of the flood, when people had to put their faith back in God. So are our children seeing themselves as a light that's bringing out that colour around us? Canon law, the law of the church, challenges us to be authentic and different in our schools. It asks us to be ambitious for high academic standards. That's Canon 806 Part 2. But back in 795, it tells us that we have to be concerned through our curriculum with the complete formation of the human person. So it's back to gift. What's the gift that we bring? Why do we have to do that? Well, it goes on to tell us that's for the common good of society. Not for our own good, but for the good of those that are around us, to form a place that is intended by God to be better than it is now. It also tells us that we have to be activists. The words are to be formed to participate actively in social life. How are we challenging our students through our curriculum to make a difference to the world? So the first thing really is, don't be insular. Don't just look at what you've got. Look out at what your friends in other places that are doing great things are doing. And how do you find those great places? Well, through a variety of mediums. Many of the great schools that have influenced what I have done haven't even been Catholic schools. But the lens that I've interpreted those ideas with has been a lens that's been developing right from that day in 1990, when I walked into Edge Hill and started to plan my version of what it is to be a teacher in a classroom. So, what's the good news? What is the joy of the gospel in language that our students and our staff colleagues will understand? Now, to help me understand that, as part of the National School of Formation, we went over to the highest performing school in Southeast Asia. We travelled to St. Scholastica's, and they very much focused on the gift of the individual, and how they could develop that gift through their curriculum offer to ensure that each student was enabled to rise, fly, and soar if all our learning is to reinforce the aim of a Catholic school, which is to evangelize, that means to make Christ known today, for us today, so that we are fueled up with the Spirit, we're given power to go out, to be transformers, to be people that have a transformative effect in the world. How do we address inequalities that are out there through the themes of our curriculum? How do we encourage our students to be like Jesus today? We're going to have a look at a short video now, and it's going to exemplify some of the things that are wrong in the world today that will enable us in our curriculum to be that launch pad for our students' imaginations. Let's watch. Often the lens that we look at our curriculum offering is one that relates to our own experiences, when actually the world has many different lenses. How do we make sure that our curriculum is a reflection of the gospel on the streets, but not just the streets of our own town, not just the corridors of our own school, but also the streets and corridors of places around the world and experiences that people have around the world that challenge us to think in new and different ways. We've all been challenged, haven't we, this week? There was a blackout yesterday on the internet. We all know the reason why that was. And it's because we were challenged by something that was inhumane. The church challenges us all the time. It gives us an amazing gift called Catholic social teaching, and engagement with the national curriculum. Themes of solidarity. How do we come together to serve the common good? How do we relate everything that we do to preserving the dignity of the human person in the common home that we live in? How do we show the preferential option for the poor and the marginalised? So how does your curriculum really meet the needs of all? That makes it an authentic curriculum. It means that we've applied the principle of subsidiarity, which means making decisions that are local to our school, our community, and meeting the needs by utilising the gifts of the people that we have as our colleagues, of our community who we work with. So, how is our curriculum, if it's a place where we meet God, where everything is sacred and nothing is secular, how does it become a pilgrimage experience? So when we take our children down to the local river, when we're learning about rivers and we see that it's been polluted with those little gas canisters, when we see that it's got glass thrown in there from the bottles that people have been drinking from, when we see the plastic that's left there, how judge, act, which is the pastoral cycle of the church. How do we look through our curriculum lens with a lens of the gospel and see that something's wrong, and judging in the light of the gospel, decide how we're going to change it? We thought about the gospel story of people seeming to be prisoners that needed to be set free. And so our children went down to the local dementia care home that had just opened. And they decided that they could be part of setting free those people that were well looked after in that care home, but were segregated from what life had been like. So they took stories to read to them. They got the community engaged in knitting twiddle-offs, which are those things that you fiddle about with, and science has shown slow down the rate of dementia. And they invited some of them to come into school to our assemblies, to be part of a community, to serve the common good. Our Year 4s, whose curriculum is driven by Manchester and Greater Manchester, go on the Peace Walk, and they see the homeless Jesus statue in St. Anne's Square. Their Peace Walk leads them to the Cornerstone Centre, and the pizzas that they've been making as part of their curriculum go as part of their act of mercy to feed the hungry. Their lives are changed by seeing something that they wouldn't normally see in the streets and the classrooms and the corridors that surround their daily lives. So how do we make practical and real our curriculum to become an authentic curriculum? How do we make sure that our students are engaged in being decision makers at a deep level rather than a superficial level? We saw that again at St. Scholastica's in Manila when we met someone called Shibi de Guzman. You can Google her. Shibi went out onto the streets because she saw the inequality there. The inequality of a president who was acknowledging the poor by saying to his police force, go out at night and assassinate them, and leave a sign on them that says they might be a drug pusher. Shibi went out and protested against that. It had great ramifications, but she was being authentic to the Catholic social teaching aspect of curriculum. She had been formed. When we came back, and I came into Sacred Heart on the day that we returned because I couldn't wait to share that, one of our children, Orla, who later went on to win the Bishop's Award for Caritas, showing love to humankind, started our collection processes and fundraising to buy some pedicabs, some cycle taxis that would transform the lives of people that were in danger right at the other side of the world. We'd never heard of them before that. So how is our curriculum a liturgical experience? One that draws us back to the messages of Scripture and of gospel? And how do we provoke the formation of all our staff teams so that they understand that a Catholic curriculum has to have the Francis factor? It has to tie in with Pope Francis's interpretation of the gospel for today. And he presents that in a practical way. In Laudato Si, he tells us that the environment is our common home. How do our children understand that through curriculum? So, how do we articulate that in our curriculum maps, in our specifications, in our content, in the knowledge organisers that we're all producing? And how does it become part of the sticky learning that we're asked to make sure happens? How is sticky learning about transforming the individual or the transformation of society? How is that curriculum one that doesn't just focus on the local, but on the national and the international? When we take our students on their trip to France, we call it a pilgrimage. And we visit those beaches in Normandy, and we think about the atrocity that happened then, and what's wrong today in our lives that we can change. When we go to the war graves at Vimy Ridge and see the craters that were formed by those bombs in World War I, we empathise with the people then, but also link it to our lives today. Where are people today needing our help? When we went to Notre Dame and looked up at the ceiling and saw the smoke damage, a lot more smoke damage now, we saw that that smoke was actually the smoke from the candles that had burnt for more than 1,000 years in that area of France as people prayed for a better world. But prayer is through action. So, how do we know that our curriculum is a Catholic world-class curriculum? How is it continually adapting to the changes that we experience through pandemic, but also the changes in this rapid fourth industrial revolution that we face? To make your curriculum authentic, it has to reflect your gift. It has to be one that is tailor-made to your school, but it must be focused on making the world the place that we were created to make it to be. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Martin. You can probably tell from the stunned silence, and obviously most people are on muted mics, I know, but this is the first week that not a single question has been typed up. There will be questions, I feel sure, but people were so busy being enthralled in what you were saying that nobody actually has typed up a question. Thank you so much. Absolutely beautifully done, beautifully delivered. So poignant and really relevant to the question, and exactly what I knew we would get from you, Martin. So a huge thank you from me, and no doubt I'm sure others will have more to say, but I just wanted to touch upon, while we're waiting for the first question to come in, the points to remember from the chapter of the book that we're looking at. The points to remember say you are not expected to have all the answers. Well, thank goodness, because 30 years on for some of us or more, we know that we don't. There is no area or issue that you can't raise and explore. So the same goes now for our questions, which are just starting to come in. There is no area or issue that you can't raise and explore. So questions for you to think about before we move on to our attendees' questions. Has any part of this chapter or talk today challenged you as a member of staff? And if so, why? And do you feel you need further support in developing your understanding of SMSC education in a Catholic school? And would you agree that setting learning within the context of Catholic beliefs and values brings it alive? Well, Martin's talk certainly did. So again, a huge thank you, Martin. So Amy has a question for you, Martin. I don't know if you've got your chat opened up, but Amy, could you please open up your mic and give us your question?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. My question, I'm not an NQT myself, but listening to it as an experienced teacher, it's quite overwhelming, isn't it? All that Martin was saying. So, what advice would you give an NQT who's coming new to a Catholic school about the curriculum that you've just said about being authentic? What advice would you give them? Where to start, basically? Thank you.
So. Part of my role within the Diocese of Salford is leading the training for our NQTs. And one of the first things that we ask the NQTs to go back and ask in school is why they were appointed. What was the gift that school was waiting for, that person brought to that school? And if you don't know that, you don't know what the gap is that you've got to fill. And it's that gift that you have to bring to your curriculum planning. So that's the first thing to do. The second one is to talk to the school about their curriculum intent and identity and authenticity. If it's going to meet the needs of that community and not be a one-size-fits-all curriculum, you need to understand what that school is about. When it doesn't work out for an NQT, it's usually because that's the wrong place for them to be teaching. They haven't found the right place for them yet. So as part of that finding out, it's really important to have those conversations. And I would really recommend NQTs take advantage of a program called Building the Kingdom. It runs in various venues right across the country. And Building the Kingdom really focuses us on big questions of purpose and meaning that run through the curriculum. So an example of that might be, if we're looking at computing and robotics, we might ask the question of our children, just because we can, should we? And it's coming together as gatherings in Building the Kingdom that you get to discuss curriculum with others. And it isn't a generic curriculum that we look at. You bring your own curriculum mapping and you get the planning done on the days, and it links to the scripture that's relevant in that term, that links in with the liturgical cycle. So my main advice for NQTs will be speak up, talk to the people in school, talk about why you were chosen and why your gift is important, but also go out there and look at great practice elsewhere, discuss your planning with them.
Thank you, Martin. Moving on to Amy, are you happy with that?
Yes, sorry, that was great, thank you.
Thank you. So, Daisy, welcome back, Daisy. Would
Hello.
you like to ask your question?
So due to the current situation, the likelihood is that September's going to look a lot different than we're used to. How else could we see, judge and act in a beneficial way to change the views of the individual without physically going to places?
Mm-hmm. So we did the staff training at our school earlier this week that was linked to the reopening for reception year 1 and year 6. And when we exemplified this, we said, if our purpose and our mission and our values and aims and all of those things were right, they're still right in a time of pandemic. So the things that underpin our curriculum are still right. And we exemplified that pastoral cycle by saying, if I look around and I know that currently I've got to stay 2 meters away from someone, if I don't, my action might infect them. So at a very basic level, teaching our children what social distancing looks like without being distant is a practical application of See, Judge, Act for today. But I was quite concerned when I watched the news last night, because last week the zoos were all getting ready to reopen and they were spraying the floor with all the markings. And then last night Chester Zoo was on the news, and it's a place where a lot of stuff goes on linked to Pope Francis's message about conservation and equality. Not all zoos are like that, but it was saying that they're in great difficulty at the moment and their future's unknown because the government have put the brakes on zoos opening. So what I would really urge you to do, if there are places to visit in your curriculum that aren't yet open, still support them and do all of the online visits, because it's raising an awareness that those children will take home, and it's more likely to influence their families to continue to support those places. The other thing that was on the news was the National Trust. And someone was commenting, please still keep your membership, because if you don't, places will deteriorate and close down and have to be sold off. So children are really powerful when they go home and spread those messages to their families. So I'd say keep the integrity of your curriculum, but find new ways to experience it, because those messages need to still get home to families.
That's great, thank you. Martin, I know you've touched upon building the kingdom, but from Sister Judith and I, really, could you just talk to us about how you train your staff for this, looking at this authentic Catholic curriculum?
Yeah, so we very much thought about the big questions of purpose and meaning that tied our curriculum together. So when our subject leads were looking at the knowledge organisers for their subjects, they needed to think about those big questions of purpose and meaning as well, so that they weren't add-ons or felt like something that was an addition that you had to do that you might not quite have time to do, but that underpinned the curriculum, because we all remember that the national curriculum is broad and balanced, that's one of the aims of it. But sometimes we easily forget that spiritual, moral, social, cultural is the other aim. And it's the aim that we should be most concerned with. So all our subject leaders are formed in that way, and we have regular curriculum progress meetings where we look at the curriculum for the next half term, and we discuss as a year group team with myself or somebody representing me, how that can be applied within that class, so that everybody brings their gift to it, but understands the key messages that have to follow through.
Thank you, Martin. Yasmin, would you like to open up your microphone and ask your question? I think Yasmin might have had to go out and come back in again. We'll just wait on a moment. And actually, I'll ask Yasmin's question while she's joining again. In seeking to meet the needs of all, in seeking to create a Catholic curriculum and therefore a universal curriculum, how do we ensure our children empowers BAME children?
Sorry, Sarah, I got shut out and I'm back.
Sorry, Yasmin, I did it
that.
for you, I realised.
Thank you.
Okay, so if we're thinking about curriculum, first of all, we're thinking about individuals made in the image and likeness of God. And we're thinking about individuals as brother and a sister. So we're looking at inequality and equality throughout all the experience of our curriculum. So it's really our responsibility to make sure that when we're our curriculum, we've incorporated that. Schools are, at the moment, because of Ofsteds and so on, are having a really good look at their curriculum. So it's really worth looking at whether our curriculum is an inclusive curriculum. But if we are looking upon neighbour as brother, sister, as the world as our brother, sister, and we're influenced by the dignity of the human person, that should really influence the way that our curriculum design goes. So whether we're looking at BAME or whatever categories the government might be giving as labels, we are labelling people as brother, sister.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Martin. Georgia Brown, would you like to open up your mic, please?
Hello, mine is a little bit similar to Amy's question, but as somebody who will be new to teaching, what advice, resources or books could you recommend to support planning on authentic Catholic curriculum?
Good one.
So Georgia, I know that you've attended Building the Kingdom as part of your training because you've trained with us on Heart Teaching School Alliance. And I also know that you'll be doing the NQT programme with the Diocese of Salford next year, where suggested reading or clips will be given to you. But what I would really say is, on your new school's website, where you have got your post, and I know that school very well, it's Sacred Heart, there are lots of links to an authentic curriculum. So I would say, really get your head around what the curriculum is for the Year 5 class that you will be teaching. And then start to look at those knowledge organisers and make sure you bring something of yourself to it. So have a discussion about your gift and the gift that you will bring to planning that curriculum. And that will then probably lead you down lots of avenues of Googling things and finding things out in ways that will be unique to you, because it's the relationship that you have with your class that will enable their learning to flourish.
Thank you, Martin. Sister Judith, can I just ask if you have any little pointers there? Because it's great when you come on and you have a golden nugget to take away, or a book to buy.
Thank you, and thank you for that question, Georgia, as well. And I think this is a huge thing to ask of an NQT. You know, curriculum design it isn't easy. But what Martin is saying is I absolutely concur with. When you're doing your maths or your literacy or your geography, your music, your PE, you will be glued to the national curriculum file. And you'll be looking at that box, I've got to start with this. But there's a moment when you must say before, why would I teach this to Year 5? What's the underlying purpose of teaching this? Why? And that's where, as Martin said, that big question that you're asking will lead you down avenues that you're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm doing it because the national curriculum says I have to do it. You know, in a Catholic school, yes, we do have to do it, but we thread into it the why. So take maths. I mean, we can all think of it easily in geography or even and history, but let's take maths, Georgia. You know, here you are in year 5 doing some pretty high-powered stuff, huh? You might even be doing some data analysis, yeah? The children have all been looking at data analysis, maybe on the news, looking at it vis-a-vis the whole issue of the pandemic. But when we look at data, data can be used to either manipulate, to fool people, or it can be used to inform and for good. I would be telling the children, putting this question, why are we studying this? What is it telling us? Is it giving us the truth? Can we use our mathematical skills, and they may well say, we don't have these yet, but we will do, okay, to pursue the truth in this? Georgia, you've seen some pretty shocking stuff, as we all have, about the way in which data is being thrown around. Statistics, data, all this kind of stuff. And it manipulates the common consciousness. We become terrified. We become overly confident, or we become, oh, it's all right, we don't have to worry. Because of the way it's being presented, I would use the word, children, do you think this is the truth? Do you think this is manipulating you and myself? So they're all very into the pandemic and what it's all about. They even know what R numbers are, which is extraordinary. I mean, who of us ever knew what an R number was? Huh? So there's a whole new layer there of knowledge, but that knowledge is being manipulated. And our task in a Catholic school is to give them the skills, the wisdom, the analytical ability to look beyond what they're being presented with and question it and establish, is this true? And if it is, how do I know? If I don't think it is, what am I basing that judgment on? Just gives you you're in high-powered year 5, so they're really, really good. And I know in your school they're really, really good. So you can go much further than you would have normally. Martin is saying, ask the question. So when the children come to do their maths with you, they're going, whoa, I thought we were just doing maths. You said, well, maths is a tool, but it's for something much greater. Is that okay, Georgia?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister Judith. Joanne, would you open up your mic, please, and give us your question?
It's Daniel. Me and Joanne.
Daniel, I'm so sorry. I forgot that from earlier.
He is with me, but I'm a husband, so we're sat together.
Hello, both.
So my question is, when we're teaching our curriculum, it's also not just about the knowledge, but the emotional and the affective learning on children. So it was just a question to ask, what tips and advice might you have as we come back to school during a pandemic in those very early days to help those children with their emotional well-being, where the children might not have been able to see Christ in the everyday, that sort of word enfleshed in what they're doing in their everyday lives.
So I would say here we have enormous power with our voices, with our looks, with our actions to affect others' feelings. And what you can't do is separate the emotional aspects of learning from the other aspects of learning. Learning is learning. And if we deliver our curriculum in a way that is about feelings and emotions, which we should, because we want our children to empathise with others, I don't see that coming back from a time of pandemic or in the middle of pandemic will be a major change. We've got to be do and what they teach. So what I would really be saying is don't think of splitting up curriculum into knowledge and emotion. For me, it should be a whole entirety of curriculum.
Thank you, Martin. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but I think I lost a little bit of that in the translation. I think there's still a little bit of an issue with your signal, Martin, but I think we'll persevere. We're doing okay. Thank you, Daniel and Joanne. Hayley.
Hello. My question is, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My question is, how would you respond to a person, possibly a parent, who may feel that teaching children about certain world problems is not appropriate and only for adults?
Okay, so I think there are some things that are age appropriate and that you would do in certain ways. And it's really there, I think, about forming the teacher to make sure that that's approached in a certain way, and making sure that the information that goes home to parents, first of all, so often we send knowledge organisers home at the start of a theme, that if there's anything on there that you think could be interpreted in a way that would fuel their anxiety, that's explained to them first. Because often it is really about their anxiety, and they imagine that you're going to be telling them things or exposing them to ideas that you're actually not. And to relate that always back to actually the purpose of our Catholic schools is to form our students for transformation, to make a change. So I think very often that's about parental anxieties, really, and the way that we would be communicating with them to prevent that in the first place, but also to gain their trust that what we do is appropriate. I know that Sister Judith's come across this quite a lot and tells stories on various programmes linked to this. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Sister.
Thanks, Martin. No, you're spot on. Yes, it's very difficult actually, because there's a big divide sometimes, as you know very well, between what parents think their children know and talk about and what they actually do talk about. And Martin is right. There are aspects of many big issues. I'll use one like trafficking, which is it's horrendous. But there's an aspect of that you wouldn't talk about with very young children, but it can be presented because we do slavery in history, you know, and it is slavery. So it's how we package it, if you like, for young children, and how you release more and more thinking about it and discussion about it in the right context. It is about contextualizing, age appropriate, situation appropriate, and also about knowing the children in your school, because this is a very delicate one, because sometimes the head teacher would know, the Senko would know, where there's a child that's been brought to the school who's come from a pretty horrendous background. And so sometimes with some of these areas, one needs to just check with the head teacher, because that won't be common knowledge in the staff room, because it can't be. Do you see what I mean? So the head teacher would be able to say, okay, but we'll present it in this way, or just at the moment, I would leave that. Do you see what I mean? But you can't duck these issues, because I am never cease to be amazed at how much very young children are aware of, but their parents may not be aware that they are. There's the conflict.
Very wise advice there. Thank you, Sister Judith, as ever. Robin, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that working? Yeah, it kind of follows on from Hayley's question, really, to do with parents. So with the current climate and all the home learning and Zoom learning that's going on, how can we ensure children who are from either non-Catholic families or families with reluctant parents who don't really want to engage in a Catholic curriculum, how can those children still explore Catholic social teachings within their home learning?
Okay, so the first element that I'd look at here is, when those parents chose your school, they chose a Catholic school, and they chose the curriculum that goes with that school. The community school down the road will still be doing things, however, that are about social transformation. It's just that the lens they're wearing to do that's different. So in a Catholic school, Christ is at the centre. Our curriculum is a sacred experience. It's that pilgrimage journey for us. And if we actually look at the themes of Catholic social teaching, so care for our common home, I'm not sure that any parent could disagree with that. Solidarity. There's been so much shared on the news recently about people standing together. Dignity of the human. Again, who could object to that and working with their children on that? The common good. Doing things that are going to benefit society so that others are doing things that will benefit us. Making decisions at a local level, subsidiarity and participation. All parents want their children to be participative and having a preferential option for the poor and the marginalised. Everybody is marginalised in some things, or at least most people are. Everybody isn't good at everything. Some people are poor at some areas, but we've all got wealths that we can share. So when it's presented in that way, often those parents will love the idea of what they're doing. So it's really, I think, finding the hook to hang the curriculum on that will resonate with those families in their homes.
Thank you, Martin. Sue Owen has got a great question, which perhaps quite a few of us on here might like to answer, because there are quite a few of us on here who have been to Manila either with Martin or at another time. So Sue, welcome. Please ask your question.
Okay. Clearly your visit to Manila was a life-changing experience. What might you describe as a highlight that perhaps fuels or informs how we need to educate our pupils of today? Is there a main sort of thread that you brought back, or a real highlight that you know you experienced during the trip?
Yeah. So in terms of curriculum, it was that St. Scholastica's approached their curriculum with Catholic social teaching at the heart. It had to be a curriculum for social transformation. The thing that personally transformed me, there were a couple of them actually. We went on a visit to a graveyard, and the graveyards there are quite different to ours. They're the colonial type graves that are stacked up one on top of the other. And on top of those graves, people had built shanty houses. And in some of the graves that were like mausoleums, that people were living inside them. And whole families were living amongst the dead. And when we went back to the St. Scholastica's hotel, we had breakfast the next morning at 6 a.m. and they weren't quite ready for us. And we were helping get the room ready, and I lifted the blinds, and there were some tiny children that were lay asleep on the path outside. And somebody in a uniform came over and kicked those children to wake them up and tell them to move on. Myself and Alison went out to the 7-Eleven store across the road and bought them some bananas and other things to eat, and they came to get them. It was really then that I realised that on our doorsteps we often ignore, because it isn't so stark as it was there. So we can walk past people that are homeless on our streets, but there we saw small children, families living amongst the dead. And the message that I then brought back to curriculum was, our curriculum has to open the eyes of, first of all, our colleagues, of our staff teams, if they're going to open up the eyes of our students. So formation is critical to getting curriculum right in our schools.
Absolutely. I completely and utterly agree with all Martin has said, and there were so many aspects of that trip that had almost a devastating effect in a way on those of us that were there. It was a lot to witness and experience and carry with you, I think, when you came back. Lots of emotions, one of which was probably anger for me over anyone anywhere in the world having to live the way that those people did. It was just life-changing and completely transformational. But on a kind of a more positive note, what really struck me about the girls who were at St. Scholastica and those who had left was the bonds between them, partly the ongoing communication, but it was the way it had transformed them as agents of change going into the future. So many of those young girls retained so much. It became part of their living and breathing every day, in so much as they then went on to really responsible, what we would call PC jobs, if you like, but they went to work as barristers, but they would work as barristers in, ecologically and economically sensible companies who were, I'm struggling for my word now, it's hiding there somewhere, but, were really good companies and really treated their employees well, but took the values of society very seriously as well. And many of those girls also went on to sponsor other street children to be able to go to St. Scholastica's, because obviously it's a fee-paying or a scholarship school, but many of them would go on and sponsor street children to go on to have better life chances at that school. And in fact, Sister also told a story before we went to visit, actually, when she came to talk to us at the national school, the national head teachers retreat, actually it was. And she talked to us about she needed to build this big hospital, and eventually this big CEO from one of the big car companies came to her and said, how much do you need? And she, kind of blustered a bit and said, well, I'm not sure. And she said, well, what can you afford? She said, well, sister, we'll pay for the hospital, just tell us what you need. And it turned out that this girl actually had been an ex-pupil of St. Scholastica's, and had remembered also that she had been a street child, and that she was given all those opportunities and all those values that became intrinsic as a part of her experience at St. Scholastica's. So amongst many other things, that's what struck me. Julianne, would you like to, and Alison, would you like to come on and give us a snippet? That's it, Julianne. We can hear you now, and Alison. Thank you.
I totally agree. The visit to Manila was transformational, and I've had the opportunity and the privilege of visiting Tanzania on many of the occasions, and the best visits that I've had are when I've taken sixth form students over, so that in actual fact they've had the same experience that we then had as teachers. But of all of the people that have spoken to us on the National School of Formation, the person that I remember the most was John Battle, and he used the phrase "know your own postcode." I don't know whether you can remember that.
Yeah.
And I think that what we've heard today from Martin in terms of developing an authentic Catholic curriculum, it's great if you can go and have that experience abroad. I went to care for Calais in last October and volunteered for a week there, which again, was just fantastic. But the majority of our children don't get that opportunity. But knowing your own postcode, we can all do that, and we can lead our children to be the same young people that were in Manila, who were working within their own postcode, weren't they? In them doing that here in the food banks, cornerstones, and all the wonderful opportunities that you give your children through building the kingdom. So I think it's great to get that opportunity, but in actual fact, we live in our own postcode. And I always remember John Battle saying that, and that had a really profound impact on me. So it just brought it back again, listening to us talking about Manila.
Thank you, Alison. Julianne.
Building on to what Alison and Martin have been saying, and Sister Judith, in that it's great we've had these amazing opportunities from the National School of Formation, and the Philippines, just unbelievable. And for me, it was how people who were in dreadful situations, Martin's talking about the visit to the cemetery, I went the following year and really had to fight not to just cry in front of people. But these people in dreadful situations had such immense faith and immense hope for the future, and made the best of everything. And talking about what Alison is saying, I then thought about, how can we relate this back to Erdington in Birmingham in a primary school? What can these little children do, age 4 to 11? And what's come as a result of that? And without a shadow of a doubt, the Holy Spirit guiding all of us, is our children have made a difference, and every bit of the jigsaw, from the building the kingdom, from enabling staff, I'll probably be talking about things next week, but every single bit has come together with the Holy Spirit. And I've got these dynamic young people, and I don't mean the dynamic young staff, they are amazing. I mean the children who are leading the way. And each year we've had our chaplaincy team moving forward, and I've thought, we're never going to beat this chaplaincy team. We're never going to beat. And because those foundations are being put in by these amazing young people, the next year bands come in and build on it, and the next year bands come in and build on it. And the whole thing just comes together, and you just think, yeah, this is amazing. We're constantly learning and constantly moving forward. But this is thanks to lots of people in these little squares. And, you know, for all of those people that are blacked out, that's cheating. We can't see what you look like. But, you know, just take little snippets. If you only just got one thing from Martin's talk today, great. Throw the rest of it away. If you got one thing from Raymond last week, great. But it will all come together. And those of you, those NQTs and those young people, don't be panicking about the reading lists and the this, that and the other. The fact that you have that passion and enthusiasm, that's priceless. The rest will come. The rest will come.
Thank you, Julianne. And yes, you will have a eureka moment where all of a sudden it all blends in together and you think, now I get what that is, because we were the same on our training. We weren't quite sure why we were there, and then all of a sudden, with a great big thud, it came down. This is why we're here. Guys, I'm aware that we've gone over, but this is just such fantastic conversation that I don't want to end just yet, but we are coming into land. Stephanie Massey has asked, can you suggest a great liturgical calendar resource? Going ahead to that's another week's session as well, Stephanie, but great. Can you suggest a great liturgical calendar resource for a non-Catholic teacher working in a Catholic school, please? And do come on, Stephanie, come on camera or microphone if you want to, while Martin talks to you. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm an NQT in September, so I was just wondering if you could point me in the direction for a good resource just to use as a point of reference for myself.
Yeah, so How to Survive in a Catholic School is a really good resource, and you've got that straight away. You've accessed Building the Kingdom this year, Steph. So you've got the resources that go with those that build upon the liturgical year. But I would also say get a copy of the Ordo, and it's just a document that says what colour we're on at the moment, because each time of the liturgical cycle has a different colour. It will often have a little kind of pie chart in there, so that when you're setting up your sacred spaces in class, make sure you've got the right coloured fabric on there, and it will give you some of the readings that happen. And there are some pupil-friendly ones as well. So you can get these booklets that have readings for the day that are appropriate for different year groups, that are a really good starting point. But I would say don't really get too worried about it. Use the resources you've already got from Building the Kingdom, because that is rooted in liturgical cycle.
Thank you, Martin. And just to say, Martin has mentioned the Ordo there, but lots of dioceses have different ones. So most of them actually have them available online. You can download them as a PDF usually. And they also, it's quite a lovely link into your specific diocese, because you might be praying for particular priests or deacons, or indeed even sometimes schools. So it is worth searching for the one for your own diocese. But there will be more resources. My great friend Sister Ellen McCarthy is doing the week about the liturgical year. So there will be more resources to come. But thank you, great question. I think we have our last question here from, is it Mia or Maya? Mia? Maybe she's had to go. I think, we're coming towards the end of school day.
It's a good question, Sarah. So
yes, well, I'm going to read it out for you.
Yeah.
Do you think in a time of great change and uncertainty, might Catholic schools need to look again at their authentic Catholic curriculum to ensure it reflects current affairs? And I wondered if this would, well, we've kind of touched upon it today, like George Floyd, COVID, and the Hong Kong issue. Topics that are on a daily basis continuing to further divide an already fragmented world? Or do you think in such times of uncertainty, change to our curriculum could cause more uncertainty for the communities we serve? It's almost worth a round of applause, that question. It's a great question.
Sorry, Martin, that was off me. I'm signing in under Mia's name.
Okay, so my answer there really is curriculum should never be a straitjacket, and it should never be so fixed and set that it doesn't move with the times and reflect the society that we're in. So as long as it's handled in the way that we've outlined earlier, and we deal with things in a sensitive way, I think that curriculum should be continually evolving and developing.
Thank you.
Thank you, absolutely. So there is another one here, and it's another great question. Victoria. Victoria Parish, if you're still here.
Hi, yes, sorry, I've unmuted it now.
Thank you, Victoria.
My question was on the topic of big questions within the curriculum, and using the example of aiding conservation and supporting zoos like Chester, for example, I know spoke about, for the positive work that they do. I fear teaching children that we can justify keeping God's animals in confined spaces such as zoos and denying them the natural migration, survival and hunting patterns is life enhancing for them. Though my personal opinion differs from others. So must we come to a conclusion about such matters with children, or is it our job to just lead them to question these things for themselves? Is there always a correct answer?
I think the answer is there isn't always a correct answer. We're leaving them to judge and to act, and that there are lots of things that can be debated. And there is a new vogue in schools that's kind of an old vogue that's come back in fashion, that's to do lots of debating where you see both sides, and it encourages their critical thinking really, and enables them to transfer that to other experiences that they might have. So that, you know, there would be some zoos, wouldn't there, that would be bad places, and equally there'd be other zoos that are rooted in conservation and at restoring things that have gone wrong because of the actions of people. So really encouraging our children to be critical thinkers so that they can apply it to the problems of the future that we can't even imagine what they'll be yet.
Excellent question again. Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, Martin. I mean, thank you, everyone, really. I think we are going to have to start drawing it to a close, but Yasmin has just asked if she could come back on and say something.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Martin, the reason I asked you that question before was because it's something close to my heart, really, and I suppose after your talk, I felt inspired to ask that. And I feel a bit inspired now just to share a little bit more, because I know there are a lot of head teachers here. But at different times in my life, I personally have come up against racism. And what I mean by that is I've had people treat me as being less than, either mentally or even in terms of how I look. And I'd like to say I've been very blessed to never have experienced that at Sacred Heart. I've always felt extremely empowered and inspired by Martin as a mixed race woman. I've really been very, very blessed. I think at certain points in my life, I found myself feeling less than, you know, because of, like I say, my race, my colour of skin. But recently, through doing SMSC work at Sacred Heart, I've been developing this Museum of Culture. And in doing that, I've come across so many great BAME role models that I've come to see myself differently, and I found myself to be really empowered in the process. I think in our schools, through doing this, we need to ensure that our children are daily presented with strong BAME role models. I think this isn't just necessary for BAME children, but for all people, because too often BAME are shown as being people, as being BAME people are shown as being people in need, and I feel not enough strong and positive BAME role models are shared with our children. And it isn't that there's a lack of BAME role models, it's more that I think there's a lack of focus on the ones that are there. It's important for these role models to be shared with everyone, because I think in doing that, we'll be presenting our children with a truer representation of humanity, that all people are made in the image of God, and as you rightly said, Martin, that all people have within them the capacity for greatness, and you continually reminded me of that. Thanks.
Yasmin, thank you so much for that really almost raw and poignant and authentic response to that, really, and great stuff for us all to be continuing to think about. I was about to say goodbye, but I think Robin has got her hand up. Or were you just waving at me, Robin?
Oh, I didn't know I'd done that, sorry.
That's all right, they're just checking. No, fabulous. A really poignant way to end our session, really, and great food for thought for the future, which I think no doubt we should and will come back to, Yasmin, because I'm sure lots of people have reflections there. But I spent a couple of years in South America and actually married a South American, and so my children are, I suppose, if you had to give them a label, Latino, mixed race, whichever, but I just find it really sad because every time they come to fill in an application form or a form for anything, every time they have to come to me and say, Mum, what should I put in that box? And isn't that just really sad, because they don't know who they are, they don't feel there's a box that they sit in. And again, it's just all, you know, we're obsessed with categories, and I understand that sometimes it's about you know, measuring or checking, you know, ethnic monitoring or whatever, but it's just really sad when someone doesn't know what box they fit in. It's all great food for thought. So thank you, everyone. It's so lovely to see you all back here. Martin and I were really worried we'd have a smaller pool. I'm sorry, we seem to go on longer and longer every week. Anyone who wishes to stay for the wash up, as I call it, Sister Judith, Alison, Julianne, whoever, Martin, obviously, whoever would like to, you are very, very welcome. And Zoe, if you're still out there, you've probably had to go, but Zoe, it would be lovely if you were able to stay and have a chat with us. But the rest of you, have a fabulous week. You are all complete stars. We know you're working under really difficult circumstances in some areas. So we wish you all the very, very best. It's Julianne next week. She will be just as marvellous as Martin, if not more marvellous. Not sure if there'll be signs. Not sure if there'll be signs. Quite often there are. I want a set of your signs, please, Julianne. So well done, everyone. Have a great week. And thank you. Oh, so 3:30 next week, don't forget. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
I'd love to know who Mum was. I got quite a shock when it said Mum's coming on. I thought, what? I don't think it was my mum, but it was obviously someone's. So we're getting there. And Zoe did come back. Thank you, Zoe. I'm hoping you're still hanging on there. She might have to go, of course, but okay, fabulous. So
I'll just say thank you very much, Martin, and everybody.
Thanks, Chanda. Bye.
That was great, Martin. What a great input. Really,
absolutely amazing.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
The connection in school was appalling. It kept coming up on my screen saying unstable connection.
Yes,
I've got someone at home, couldn't do it at home because of the noise.
It was all right though, actually. I mean, it held up. There were a couple of times when it kind of slowed down a bit, and then I wasn't sure if it was me or if it was
No,
Zoe, are you there? Hey, there she is. Everyone, I just wanted you to, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but Zoe is that sounds awful. Our new CEO, I nearly said Raymond's replacement, but that's awful. That's like saying this is so-and-so's mother. Zoe, it's fabulous that you're able to come back again. But all this criminal-looking lot here have done the NSF with me. So it's become a real bond for us. So
it has,
I can't help but think, would be great, but maybe not this year for you, Zoe, because you'll have a lot to come to grips with, but maybe the following year we could put you through to the programme, because Bishop Mark always offers 5 scholarships, if you like, or to go towards the funding. So it'd be great to think that you could join us. But I'm sure, Sister Judith, that she could come to any of the sessions and conferences and things anyway, couldn't she?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Because I think we would understand that perhaps September would be a bit soon for you, Zoe. You might have a few other things on your mind for a while.
It doesn't start till October. So, gosh, Zoe, you've got a whole month to get.
Shall I stop the recording now?